Welcome to the morning after the night that was, the aftermath of Game 4 at the Bell Center, being flipped on its head in the third period with the Washington Capitals explosion with 4 goals en route to a 5-2 win. Welcome to Monday. Welcome to the special playoff live stream right here on youtube.com as we get going on this back to work Monday for everybody. Just a big shout out, of course, to all our favorite sponsors. We've been running this for a while now. Your chance to win $200 to spoil your pet, your dog, or your cat with one of the best in the business. Yes, my friends, that is Silver Paw Dog, the Everything Pet Warehouse sale event coming up this week, starting Friday right through the weekend, with part of the proceeds going to benefit the SPCA West. And courtesy of the show, you have your chance to win $200 in a random draw. You enter your name, you enter your email, and Bob's your uncle. And of course, proudly brought to you by Bet Online. As we say, good morning to Marco D'Amico with RG Media at MN D'Amico. Marco, you were in the building yesterday. What was the vibe leaving the arena in the aftermath of that 5-2 game 4 loss?
Rage.
Oh, rage.
Rage.
I like that word.
Yeah, there was a significant rage. I thought a lot of people were upset at the way that game went down, be it the backbreaker third goal, some of the questionable calls or non-calls on the ice. It was just all over the place. And unfortunately it is what it is. We're going to dig into that, but I tend to look at the positives in this case because, again, like we talked about, like the Canadians are playing on house money and they're taking it to the best team in the East. And with due respect, without trying to insert myself in the conversation or trying to make excuses or get into conspiracy theories, the Canadians were keeping up with the Washington Capitals in spite of the officiating, and I think that's extremely telling for them right now, but also
Yeah,
extremely telling for them in moving forward.
that's fair. And, when we start with how last night's game 4 kind of unraveled, it was interesting because the first periods of every game up until yesterday have been pretty interesting for both sides, right? Good and bad. Um, what did you make of the first period from Washington and Montreal? It felt to me, watching at home, that it were two tight teams. Nobody wanted to be the first one to make a mistake. That's how it felt like it played out to me. What was the energy in the building? What did your eyes tell your brain about the first period from both sides yesterday?
Yeah, well, it was as we kind of discussed, right? It was very much the Washington Capitals coming out hard and heavy right at the beginning and trying to get on the board and make something happen. And I really feel like the Canadians had good pushback. They were playing them safe at 5-on-5, moving the puck up the ice. But unfortunately, we saw what happened. It, I think when it comes to the way that the Canadians play, there's one aspect of that I just feel like there was a missed opportunity in the first, and that
Yeah.
was they didn't get enough pucks on net. You have a guy like Logan Thompson that comes out of game 3, miraculously comes back for game 4. You should be testing the holy hell out of him. You should be
Yeah.
getting him to move. You should be all over that. And I felt like the Canadians were still trying to pick corners in the first period. Like they had a good amount of shot attempts, but shots on net were very few and far between. And I think, a lot of people will say, well, it doesn't matter. It's the shots that go in. Absolutely. But in the playoffs, shots that go in more often than not are rebounds,
Yeah.
are garbage goals. Look at the way that the Washington Capitals scored yesterday, some
Hmm.
pretty garbage goals. And
Nonstop.
so it is what it is. You have to make your own luck. And I feel like the Canadians, on the power play, we'll get to that. They look absolutely fantastic. But
Yeah.
at 5-on-5, you got to get dirty, and you got to get dirty quick. And I know the Canadians are playing the correct way that one would normally want to play in the regular season, but they're not attacking Logan Thompson like they should. And unfortunately, that I feel like that cost them momentum in the first period. And they were able to get a lead regardless, but I just felt like, the momentum already at that point you could kind of see. But of course, that momentum was also cut by the consistent intervention of the officials who decided that, they were also going to get involved in this game.
No doubt, and we're going to get into that. That's a major storyline for me from the aftermath of the 5-2 loss in game 4. So Dylan Strome opens up the scoring with the second of the playoffs. It's 1-0, right? And then the power play begins, and Juraj Slafkovsky gets his second goal on the power play. And you alluded to it just moments ago. How dangerous and how multifaceted it is compared to what it looked like here. And I want to get into the Capitals. I want to give the Capitals their respect, because to your point about the 18 shots Montreal had, look at the top line that had been buzzing, right? Carberry's been flattering the Suzuki, Caulfield, Slafkovsky line. Collectively, that line had 4 shots on goal. Montreal has outplayed Washington 5-on-5. They've had more shots than the Capitals 5-on-5 through the first 3 games, and then game 4 happened, and then it kind of went back to the Capitals side of things. And I want to give Washington a ton of credit. They played a great road game. They played a boring road game until it wasn't boring, but they were really, I think, on point when it came to their details. And so walk me through why the power play looks better, Marco.
They're moving. They're moving, and they have 2 legitimate shooting options on each side of their of the power play, playing that diamond formation. But you look at that, you look at Juraj Slafkovsky's goal, they move that puck around, right?
Yeah.
You know, Ivan Demidov beating one man with quick move, going around the net and finding an open Slafkovsky. That's exactly the kind of mobility that power play did not have. Why? Because the player that was playing on the left circle wasn't moving at all. So at one point, if you were trying to play a cycle or at least rotate a little bit, you know, at one point, Nick Suzuki was at the point, Lane Hudson was at the right circle, and Ivan Demidov was going around the net, and they didn't know who to cover. And that's what I mean when you overload the defense, when you play that power play formation, it's exactly that. And so I really appreciated the way that Ivan Demidov played that. And then on the second, the Cole Caulfield goal, just again, straight up end-to-end passing. They had to get Logan Thompson to move laterally twice, push off twice, and he just did not cover his post in time on Caulfield's shot. And I feel like, again, like this is why I was saying I would have hoped that the Canadians would have tried to do more of that at 5-on-5. But on the power play, like even if Patrick Laine is healthy, I don't know how you can go back to that with the way that they're moving that puck out there. Like to me, Ivan Demidov last night showed that he absolutely belongs in an NHL top 6 and on a first power play wave without a shadow of a doubt.
Was this the turning point? You know, we obviously, I mean, I want to get into the officials. I wanted to get into how Washington played, the Arbor Jackeye effect, but obviously, we're going to be looking back at this and wondering what happened, right? So there it is. There's Tom Wilson. There's Alex Carrier, and there's the collision. The body check that perhaps changed the series, because it was right afterwards where Washington finishes, gets into the zone, and scores the 3-2 goal, and they don't look back. So let's talk about this one play in particular, and perhaps what could have been done differently, because there's a couple of things that popped up right away for me. One was,
I felt like Carrier was
Alex
put in a
Carrier,
position.
Alex
Was put in
Carrier
a position
takes,
to get killed.
correct, but the old
Should have been
coach,
cleared.
the old
Should have been
coach in me
cleared.
says, why is Alex Carrier so quick to get up? And in hindsight, Marco, he should have laid down on the ice. Personally, it's easy to say that today. Okay.
Well,
Secondly, is the line changed, fudged things up. The line change messed things up. It put Caden Gooley in a spot where I don't know what he was doing, what he was thinking, where he was going, which allowed Mangiapane to walk in with a ton of room to let a shot off that I personally think Jakub Dobeš would love to have back today. To your earlier point about some of these goals the Capitals have scored, they're not aesthetically pleasing, dominant goals. They're lucky bounces, and you get what you deserve. But let's talk about this hit. I gave you my side, my perspective. Was it the hit that changed the game, that changed the series?
Yeah, I think so. And I don't necessarily think it's like the hit itself, yes. But it's how the Canadians reacted to that hit was a dead giveaway. They were absolutely frazzled by it. One of the things I will say is that the reason why Alex Carrier was in that position to begin with is the Canadians are so, and this is something they're going to have to learn. This is if they take away anything from the series, they're going to have to learn this. They're very soft on their on their clearing attempts. Very soft. Not strong enough on pucks. And that's what happened. Is it was meant to be a dump out and missed, and then Alex Carey had to come in and do it, and then was exposed to a guy that was already 3 strides into his motion before he even saw Carey with the puck, and Tom Wilson. Whether you want to call that a headshot, charging, whatever, it's a worthwhile argument. Was the point of contact the head? I think it was a little bit of both, a little bit of shoulder, a little bit of head. But at the end of the day, the scrambling that the Montreal Canadiens did from that point was the most telling to me. Not the fact that Alex Carrier got hit. It's the fact that they couldn't process what just happened and continue to play. Or, worst case scenario, clear it. Because if Alex Carrier is injured, and he could have easily claimed to be after a hit of that ferocity, then you can just replace him on the ice, even if it's an icing. So, again, I just don't feel like there was a strong situational awareness from the players on the ice. But then again, like you said, and I think this is key here, I don't think anybody watching that game did not think that the Washington Capitals were embellishing. Not one. Even the refs at one point looked at the Capitals bench and this, you keep diving, we're going to keep calling. Yeah. And they even started going like this to the Capitals at one point, because even the refs were like, guys, we're gonna have to start calling you for embellishing here. And so one thing I find the Canadiens have not done, like you look at the phantom high stick call on Pierre-Luc Dubois, right?
Yep.
Selling that call. It sucks because it reminds a lot of people of soccer, and really it is what it is, but it's gamesmanship at this point in time.
Yeah.
Trying to be the goody two shoes that wins through hard work alone is not going to be enough when you have officials that can impact a game to that degree, especially when you look at the fact that the Montreal Canadiens were the only team scoring on the power play last night. The Capitals were given a 5-on-3 and could not get the job done, right? Like, they were given every opportunity to run away with this game, and they could not. So if I'm the Montreal Canadiens, like Jake Evans getting flatlined by Alexander Ovechkin, that was a headshot, by the way.
That was worse than the Wilson Carrier hit.
That was worse than that. To me, would have been a 5-minute major.
Oh, dude, I said it this morning on TSN 690 with Stelikas. He should have been tossed from the game.
Yeah. And DOPS, if they don't look at that, then I think, again, we go back to the same kind of discussion about consistency and who you are as a player determining calls on the ice. But that, to me, was the most egregious missed call of the entire game. He got a 2-minute interference penalty. But again, and I say this to, this applies again. If Jake Evans stayed down for 3 seconds, that's a 5-minute major. The fact that he popped right back up, love Jake Evans, great warrior, didn't think that one through.
No, and then
obviously his head just got rocked, right? Like,
correct.
You're not really thinking, and like I've been in those situations where you get like a solid hit to the head. You're not thinking. Adrenaline takes over. You're trying to get up. You're trying to see what's going on, right? But like the unfortunate reality is if Montreal would have sold on either of those 2 calls, you'd be looking at longer penalties. It's unfortunate, and it is what it is at this stage of the playoffs, but it's unfortunate.
Here's Martin St. Louis, Marco talking about where they're at in terms of the refereeing, the embellishment, what the referees apparently, because again, the league they basically did what umpires do in baseball. Both dugouts got a warning for the shenanigans in game 3, for the shenanigans during the TV timeouts, the shenanigans at the ends of periods, and the league warned both Montreal and Washington, cut that out, and then talked about how they're going to really, nail down the embellishment. Martin St. Louis, after his team's game 4 loss.
I just don't know. I don't know. It's hard. Like I'll be careful with my words, but it's hard to watch some of these calls. To me tonight, like, one of the mandate was about embellishing tonight.
Able to come back, and you got to go to the bench. Did you figure there that you guys were in trouble?
Yeah. Well, I was ready for the first shot. I don't even know what happened. I feel like it hit Cole and it bounced over my pads or something like that. It's it's whatever, hockey, I guess. I felt like it's going to be a whistle because they were in their defensive zone and far away, but I guess, as I said, I don't really know the rules. I felt like it should have been a whistle, and I mean, it was kind of a scary hit, but I guess the rules don't apply for everyone in this league. I have no idea. Point fingers. I never ever do that as a hockey player, never ever done it, so I don't want to be specific, who could be better. I just feel like the referees, I just hope you don't get them in Washington. That's it. I'm not going to point fingers, but that's just those little bounces maybe cost this game. I don't know. It feels like.
So you heard Coach Martin St. Louis at a loss for words. You can literally see his brain working. How do I edit myself? How do I say what I really want to say without making bulletin board material, without costing my franchise $5,000? Jakub Dobeš. Sometimes I think ignorance is bliss with Jakub Dobeš when he's out there. And it's interesting, too, because, again, that first goal, the hot potato goal, I like how active and how aggressive Dobeš is. It was kind of surprising to me that he wasn't the aggressor in that situation, but another learning moment there. And the same thing after that game. I'm not the biggest fan, I suppose, when we listen to a rookie goaltender talk about, I hope it's not the same referees there. But again, that's a confident player. That's a confident guy who's out there and sees the game through his lens. So what's your point of view? Let's start with the coach's press conference and then get into Jakub Dobeš and what he had to say, being as honest and upfront as he's been all season, Marco.
I mean, yeah, look, people are going to basically make comments and say he should have kept his mouth shut or he shouldn't be saying stuff like that. Do you don't think the Montreal Canadiens are going to contact the NHL after last night's game to be like, hey, buddy, right? Like,
Yeah.
if Alex Carey is out for the series, they have a significant gripe to make that kind of a call. If Alex Ovechkin only gets a 2-minute for a clear headshot as the CTE investigation is about to be reopened with the NHL, there's your clear and indicative view on the play, right?
Yeah.
And so, to me, Martin St. Louis handled it well because he's been outspoken about referees, and obviously they take down notes and they remember because referees are human. And if you're going to tell me that they're impartial to their egos, I would not believe you. And so that is something to factor in. Now, this to be said, we're going to talk about what facts here. I'm not going to start speculating, they don't like Canadian teams or they're paid off or it's because the league wants Washington in the next round. I don't think it's any of that. But I think the issue that we're seeing here is that there is no consistency. There is no consistent. I'll give a direct example for those that do remember. There was a penalty on Nick Suzuki, an interference penalty against Nick Dowd on Nick Suzuki in the offensive zone, where he was kind of pushed down. There were 7 plays like that hadn't been called. And not 30 seconds prior in the defensive zone, Lane Hudson was chasing for a puck and got hauled down from behind, and they didn't call that. So it's even even people watching have difficulty trying to find what the standard is and where to draw that line. We're always told it's the playoffs, right? So in the playoffs, they're a little bit more lenient with the whistles and try to let the play be the play. But I found yesterday, they inserted themselves as a third party into that game in ways that I found were unnecessary. And, when you look at, we talked about it, the Dubois high stick. If you don't see the high stick, call a 4 and then review it, right? That's what you're supposed to do. Instead, you give a phantom 2-minute call when you didn't even see the high stick yourself because one ref was behind the net with Dobeš blocking him and the other one was behind and didn't get a view of it. That to me is irresponsible refereing. Now, again, I'm not going to say the Canadiens, it could have made a difference. It couldn't have made a difference. It's not about the refs. I would rather look at the play, and I think we should dive into the on-ice play. But when it comes to the officiating, I think we've said enough in this case. Just woefully inconsistent, a sore black spot on the NHL so far during these playoffs, and just continuing the argument to bring in more of a consistent VAR into the sport because the referees are simply not living up to a standard. And at a certain point in time, the NHL, they're going to get a lot of pressure from owners and fans to start bringing in some form of machine learning to assist refs in making calls and overturning calls for them. Because at this point, they're making more mistakes than the teams playing the game. And I think that's problematic.
Well, listen, if they can get down some sort of shot clock, I'm all for more VAR. I'm for more review. I'm for more getting the right call. There's so much money on the line. The stakes have never been higher, and they get higher seemingly every year. So I'm all for getting it right because, again, there's so much on the line. Now, the Montreal Canadiens season is obviously on the line Wednesday when the series picks up with Game 5 from the U.S. Capitol. Should the Montreal Canadiens go to Washington and win a game for the first time in this series, it's back to a Wednesday, Friday, Sunday to go the whole way to take you, I suppose, into a hypothetical Game 7. How do we get to a Game 7? By winning Game 5. I would imagine, Marco, the day off, the extra day off will be good for Sam Montembeault and Alex Carrier. Before I get you into this, can we talk about Montembeault? Have you heard anything? I haven't read anything. Anything there you can cast a light on today as it relates to Montembeault's health?
Well, I saw Montembeault at the game yesterday, and
yeah,
I don't want to sound the alarm, but it was it didn't he's obviously walking, so it's not like he's like terribly injured.
Yeah.
But given the time frame, he was having a little bit of difficulty going up the stairs. I like, again, I don't want to spread rumors. I don't want to be on like dirt
No, you're
sheets
just telling me what you
in
saw.
the next 24 hours, but
yeah.
It looked like he was having difficulty going up the stairs. It really did look like a hamstring style injury to me. And those things are always very difficult to predict. And I'm not a doctor. I don't pretend to be Mark Recchi in this situation, but it just, I would be, then again, I also thought that Logan Thompson was out for the series, and there he was, but I would be surprised if Samuel Montembeault starts on Wednesday. If he does, then great. Then he's turned it around real quick.
This from Juss on Nick Suzuki. Again, the Canadiens' number one line, which has been very, very good, had a weaker night compared to the first 3 games of this series. Obviously, your number one center, yes, I think that's a fair comment to make. Dylan Strome on the other side has been a great adversary. He scored his second goal of the playoffs. I don't have a problem with the 14's game. What's your read on 14 through 4 games?
The problem with 14, and it's not really his fault, is that he's playing low on the when he's being deployed. He's being deployed primarily against the Dylan Strome line to begin with, right?
Exactly.
So not only are you expecting offense from him, but he's playing a key defensive role, right? And I think that's the key. Well, I think Tom Wilson's bigger than like 90% of the league.
I was going to say, isn't he bigger than everybody?
But yeah, no, blaming Suzuki in this coin, or saying that, it would be nice to see more from Suzuki, but Suzuki was the decoy, and I think that's the key here. Suzuki holds it down, playing the bumper on the power play, so he doesn't necessarily get that touch, but he opens up the ice for other players. He's making smarter plays. He was playing safer, and I think that was the key in that element, is when you are being asked to shut down one of the best lines, well, 2/3 of the best line in the NHL, with Ovechkin and Strome, the way that they're finding themselves on the ice, that's already a massive mission to ask. I personally don't agree with that matchup. We talked about this the other game. I think the Canadiens should have been matching him up against Dubois, who I didn't think was having a very good game 3 or 4 at all.
Agreed.
So I thought that being able to attack that, especially with Tom Wilson trying to headhunt, could have been a better call. My 2 cents. Or like most teams do, play them against the fourth line. See how good Nick Dowd can be. See if Lars Eller, who I thought was getting tossed around yesterday, see how he reacts to that. And so, again, I'm not the coach. He obviously has his reasons, but I thought that the Dvorak, Gallagher, Anderson line could have matched up well against the Ovechkin line, especially with the way that Dvorak was playing yesterday. Unfortunate in this situation. Also, for anybody looking at the plus minuses in these situations, garbage stat in this case, considering that 3 of those goals were on empty netters.
Yeah, fair.
I don't think it applies looking at plus minus in this situation. All the games have been tight, and a lot of the goals have been scored on the power play on both sides. So I don't think that I don't think that that's an evaluator of talent. I saw some guy saying, "Oh, Lane Hudson was a -3 last night." He was on the ice for both of the goals against, and then the goal that he was on the ice for, where like both goalies were on the ice. He played the play. He played the man, and it was Dobesh that didn't aggressively jump on the puck. So
Exactly.
don't leave the plus minuses out of this, in my opinion.
By the way, I liked Lane Hudson's energy yesterday. I like the fact that you literally saw him become irritated on the at least 2 times where he smashed his stick, dropped an F-bomb, wasn't happy with how the play unraveled. Now, the other, we talked about this earlier in the show, right? About the turning point, the hit that changed the game, the hit that changed the series, right? So if we go back and we talk about what happens now in the aftermath of Alex Carrier leaving the game, not so sure what the concussion spotters were doing. I don't know if they were watching their iPhones and eating popcorn, but the guy had an ice bag on his head, ultimately leaves the game, right? You've been on this during the regular season when we talk about the importance of good balance. Who's left, who's right, who's not. Eric Gouvremont says without Carrier, Habs' right-handed defenseman is really weak. If Alex Carrier does not play on Wednesday, David Savard is the lone right-handed defenseman, and he's a specialist who barely plays 10 minutes a game. Marco, how do they solve this problem if Alex Carrier cannot be cleared to play on Wednesday? What should they do?
Man, that's a difficult thing, right? Because you have to, obviously Struble can come in, but then they're going to have 5 lefties in the lineup.
Yes.
At this point, I don't think it really matters at this point. What I would think is going to happen, I don't think Arbor is going to play it forward. I think that they're very much just going to keep him where he is. What I will say is I wouldn't sleep on the Canadiens calling up David Reinbacher. I would not sleep on that. And a lot of people are going to be like, "Oh, he's injured. He's not ready." I saw David Reinbacher last week. I actually have an interview coming out with him in the next 24 hours.
Oh, great. Okay.
David Reinbacher looks ready to play, be it for Laval or for
he's ready,
or for the Montreal Canadiens. He's playing a hockey game on Wednesday, whether it's in Washington or in Cleveland. He's playing a hockey game on Wednesday, so I'm not necessarily worried about that. It would be good experience. Those worried about him getting headhunted, it's possible, but if he's only going to play 7, 8 minutes, 9 minutes, who cares?
Yeah.
It's good experience. And the Canadian, he's going to play it smart. He's going to play it exactly. He's the reason why the Canadiens took their time with him is because they had the luxury to do that in Laval, right? Laval was at a 95% chance of clinching. He tweaked his knee when he came back. Wasn't because he came back too early. It's because there was a play where, almost like what we saw with Patrick Laine, there was a play where a quick little hit to the knee, you just destabilize a little bit. There's no structural damage, and the Canadiens were like, why chance it? But he said if the Laval Rocket were chasing the playoffs, he would have played. So that's all you need to know.
Yeah.
It's just scary because it's always the knees, and it was such a aggressive injury that I get fans being afraid. But he's ready to play. He is very ready to play. And I spoke to Pascal Vincent, the head coach of the Laval Rocket. Saw him again last night, and he's very ready to play David Reinbacher 23 plus minutes a game. So
brilliant.
If he's ready to go, I could only imagine what the Montreal Canadiens feel. Now, if they plan on playing Reinbacher, they will call him up. But if they just plan on inserting Struble, I wouldn't be surprised if they brought up somebody else, like, say, a Logan Mailloux, because Logan Mailloux's minutes, Logan Mailloux's role could be spread to a guy like David Reinbacher, another guy like Adam Engstrom, who also has a very offensive element. And then you could just have Logan Mailloux kind of as your 7th D. If the plan is not to play him, if they just want to bring up a body for emergency, but if the plan is to play another right D, David Reinbacher, I think, will be the call. Now, again, We'll see where Alex Carrier's health is. He was, in my honest opinion, I think he was pulled out of the game because of the concussion spotters.
Yeah.
Because they saw the head contact. They saw the head contact. But I'm crazy for pointing out the hit. When it comes to what they're going to do about it, I really hope that the Canadiens don't try to start exacting their revenge in the same way. I know a lot of people want to see Jack-Eye take out some of their players. Anderson start taking out some knees. The Canadiens have to be smarter than that. They have to play smarter than that. They have to stand up for themselves. They have to play team physical. But as we saw last night, having Josh Anderson and Arber Xhekaj in the lineup did not deter the headhunting.
No.
That being said,
yes,
I thought Arber Xhekaj played a good game. I thought he played a good hockey game. There was that one penalty.
That was a good call. That was a good call.
But it was a soft call. It was the right call to make on the play, but that was sold hard by Washington.
Well, if had the referees been consistent, I have no problem. But they weren't consistent.
Exactly. That play happened how many times that game, the games before then? Yeah. This is what I'm saying. But Washington in that game sold calls very well.
I agree with that.
It was a bad timing because Carrier had just left the first time. He had just left the bench and they were about to go on a penalty kill. But I thought that on ice hockey play, I thought Arber Xhekaj was physical. He was pushing guys along the board. He was using his reach. Saw him do a couple of good moves in the neutral zone, offensive zone, some good reads. I thought he played a good hockey game. And as a hockey player, I thought he did well. But this mythos of Xhekaj being a deterrent for this stuff,
never.
I really don't think it applies. Never. I don't think that Tom Wilson is in any way, shape, or form afraid. Exhibit A. Same thing with Alex Ovechkin. So to me, it's about playing disciplined, knowing how to pick your spots. So, for example, the penalty that Josh Anderson took when went exactly
so bad.
When Tom Wilson tried to headhunt Carrier prior to, missed him, and then Anderson came and hit him over. That doesn't make sense. In the rule book, Tom Wilson inserted himself into the play. He tried to go and hit the player with the puck. Possession was lost. Position was opened. Any of the three players around, because there was another Washington player in the play, could have touched the puck. Therefore, Tom Wilson was fair game. And in doing so, would have been, that would have been a normal hockey play, but it was instead called interference. Why? Because they saw it as retaliatory from Josh Anderson. That's the kind of refereeing that we're seeing right now. So this is why I caution the NHL and whoever is going to be reffing that game is going to be waiting for the Montreal Canadiens to start exacting revenge. And so that, to me, for tomorrow, they need to stay disciplined. They need to not give refs an excuse. And I found that there were, they were giving them some excuses yesterday on certain plays, although the refs, again, we talked about it, found their own excuses. It's important to play an internal discipline game, but and what made last night different from game 4 is those hits seemed to rattle the team. Yeah, they would make them pay on the power play, but there was no response.
Yeah.
They didn't have the same juice as game 3, right? And I think that's the thing. That energy, that juice, that relentless forecheck, attacking the middle of the ice, that's what they were missing.
Well, totally. And I want to get into Martin St. Louis here for a second. And I just want to pick up on what you had mentioned there about what we think the approach is going to be, how you want the team to stay composed, stay within themselves. I'm not concerned about that. There's part of my hockey gut that tells me Nick Suzuki is going to have his team prioritizing what's important and not trying to decapitate Tom Wilson, not trying to exact their physical will on this team. I believe Nick Suzuki is going to lead this team and try to get them to win a hockey game, not win an alley brawl, and then the scoreboard is secondary. And that takes me into, I am nevertheless, despite the 3-1 series deficit, the 4-goal outburst by Washington in the third last night en route to a 5-2 game 4 win. I woke up this morning very positive about this team. Obviously, I was a big fan of the special teams yesterday. That great 5-on-3 kill, Mike Matheson from his tuchus clearing the puck out of the zone. Mike Matheson
Well,
had a great shorthanded game last night. Number 8 was fantastic yesterday. And then the
so
other
I like
part
that
for
you
me is,
pointed out.
Marco, look at the 5 guys on the PP yesterday. And I know they put this up on this graphic. The oldest guy on the power play was the captain at 25. So you've got 19 to 25 and everything in between. And I know Elliot Friedman said it on the broadcast. Marco, you were in the building, so you probably didn't hear it unless you saw it online this morning. He said Demidov, Caulfield, Slavkovsky, Hudson are going to be wreaking havoc in the Atlantic Division for the next decade. And I think he's on the money there. So I did. I woke up
Yeah.
positive. I like the way this team battled. They had a lead. I'd never thought for a second they were going to win the game 2-1. I truthfully, hand on my heart, I thought it was going to be 2-2. We're going to flip a coin in overtime, and let's see what happens. So that didn't occur. And now let me talk to you about the negative side. Coach Martin St. Louis. If the players are learning and on a learning curve, the coach is too. You saw Coach Carberry call a timeout when his team went on the 5-on-3. I wasn't the biggest fan, and I don't know why MSL pulled his goalie when he chose to pull him with 249, 247 left in regulation time, just for the sheer fact that this team, bleep, in game 1 came back in the third period. Since the Four Nations, they've been one of the best, if not the best, third period team in hockey. There was part of me that wanted him to give his team at least another minute, another 70 seconds out there just to see. And the other part too, to me, was why didn't he call a timeout? And thirdly, his team was dog shit in the face-off circle, winning barely 40%. So those 3 things, to me, I'm going to chalk it up to a mistake, to a learning exercise, and that maybe there's a better way to do that. Walk me through what you thought about at the time St. Louis pulled Dobesh last night.
Immediately said, what's going on?
Okay.
A lot of people are going to be like, well, they won the face-off and then Hudson lost it. You pull the goalie when you have sustained offensive pressure. That's when you do it. There was no rush. They're down 1 goal. There's 3 minutes left.
Yeah.
Just get the cycle going. Get your players feeling with the puck touch, and then pull the goalie. That's my 2 cents. That's the way I saw it. And I said, there were a couple of pro scouts to my right. There was a former general manager on my left. Everybody said the same thing. And I know everyone's going to say, it's easy. You're just a member of the media. It's easy to doubt the coach. Yeah, it is. But at the end of the day, like I made that call the moment it happened. And it was clear as day that it was going to backfire because the momentum was just so far on the other end that you needed to calm the play down, get possession, install yourself, and then go. I just feel like there was a bad read of the moment, of the players, from the coaching staff. It's a learning moment. I get it. Fans were calling for his head yesterday. Yeah, fire MSL, this, that. Guys, I want to make one thing clear before we move on to this next point.
Let's go.
He got the youngest team in the history of the NHL.
Correct.
In the playoffs, right?
I guess he's going to break the record next year.
Yeah, well, whatever. They'll get there when they get there, I guess. If David Savard retires, that brings down the median. But at the end of the day, you can call him a peewee coach. You can.
Brutal take. That's a brutal take.
But honest to God,
yeah,
that comes from players that have never been in a professional hockey room. And I'm really sorry if that comes off as arrogant. It is. You have no idea the good that Martin St. Louis has done in helping players. Like, look at Cole Caulfield last night.
It's documented.
No, but look at the way that Cole Caulfield has played. Who do you think took the time in video, in on the ice, to show him these aspects, these details of his game? You think Caulfield just gained a level and evolved to the next stage? No, he was shown this. He was taught this. Martin St. Louis is the one handling the forwards anyway. And he's showing them how to evolve their game. The same thing applies to a guy like Yuri Slavkovsky, right? People are going to see the games that he's playing. He's playing such a competitive style. Who do you think showed him that?
Mm-hmm.
Martin St. Louis. So he's teaching, but he's also learning. And I think that's the thing people have to take into consideration here. You don't have a coach here that is coaching a contending team. So fans need to knock this off. Okay? Is it the players making MSL look good, or a player, like, listen, I think it's a little bit of both. I think it's a little bit of both.
For
Like, I'm
sure,
sorry.
of course.
I think it's a little bit of both. And
But hold on a second. But don't
at the end of the day,
subscribe, Marco, to the theory of, like, if you need to be inspired, you need to look to your coach, to your boss, whether it's professional or in sports, and you need to know that what I'm doing, it's for something. We're not just wasting our time and spinning our wheels here. Like, do you believe in me? And do I believe that you believe in me? And I think MSL does that.
Yeah. Listen, I spoke to a lot of people that were impressed with the way that he's handled the playoffs so far. I don't agree with some of the moves that he makes. Again, I didn't agree with what he did last night, but am I going to call him a peewee coach, or am I going to say that, he's not the right guy for the job right now? No, you could have an argument whether or not Martin St. Louis is going to be the coach that will take the Canadiens to the promised land.
Yes.
But at the end of the day, it's just like, I get everyone's emotions, but your emotions should not be dictating. Your emotions should not be dictating your decision making. And that applies to fans when it comes to Martin St. Louis. It applies to players on the ice. And, for people who actually doubt that Martin St. Louis had anything to do with helping Cole Caulfield become a more complete player, if people actually doubt that, I can't help you. I can't help you. It's been documented, like, through intermediate period games. Cole Caulfield has gone on about it and gone into detail about what details in his game Martin St. Louis has helped him work in the room. Like, at a certain point in time, you're just hating for hating. And I'm like, especially after last night, I'm so tired of it. This is such a net positive situation.
Correct.
Canadians should not be here. Correct. They were last in November.
Yep.
This is all extra house money. This is all good. This is all learning. Well, listen. Yes and no. And again, this is why I say a little bit of both when it comes to players playing well and Marty playing well. Marty didn't want to throw Demidov, and we've heard from this, didn't want to throw Demidov into the fire right off the bat. Wanted to get him some puck touches, put him on the second power play wave, get him comfortable. A lot of coaches would have reduced his minutes entirely. Marty just kept with it, continued giving him minutes, right? We've seen, Brant Clark in LA playing 11 minutes last night.
Yep.
And that, look at how well, look at the performances that he had during the regular season. He's only playing 11 minutes. So Martin St. Louis could do a whole lot worse than what he's doing right now with Demidov. And by getting him on the first power play wave, I know it's anybody would have come up with that. Absolutely. But it's in the how, guys. It's bringing them along slowly. You want to throw everything in there.
Yes.
It is what it is. But when it comes to real people, NHL players, we've seen what happens when you throw players that aren't yet ready into situations, especially in this city. Good Lord, in this city. How many prospects have been ruined by throwing them into the fire before they're ever ready?
Totally.
So bringing them along with a certain level of understanding, with a long-term vision, is different. And I know it's alien because it's not something that's been in the cards in this market for 20 plus years, but welcome to a rebuild, folks.
100%.
So I'm sorry if I'm preaching. I'm sorry if it comes off as me talking down. I'm not, but it needs to be said. And this is why I'm saying it on this platform. Chill out. This is house money, and you're seeing the best elements of this team improve game after game after game. What do you think this team is going to look like next season with a second line center? It's going to be a playoff team again, and you're going to come back to it.
I threw it out there online today after Elliot Friedman, Hockey Night in Canada. I guess from what I saw, I don't know. I apologize if he didn't break the story. Someone beat him to it, but I saw Elliot Friedman break the news that Mike Sullivan and the Pittsburgh Penguins have decided to part ways. So I quote tweeted Friedman. I'm like, now do Crosby to Montreal. So, anyways, that's not going to happen.
Sorry for my facial expression there.
Yeah, if it did, the odds would be up at betonline.ag, where we ran a contest, Marco, yesterday. We asked you to name the first Canadiens goal scorer for Game 4, and 7 of y'all mentioned Juraj Slafkovsky. And so when Slavkovsky went and scored, I went back quickly and I found all the people that had named, including our own Peter Puck, friend to the show for a long time. And so I put everybody's name into a draw, and then I made the announcement this morning, and I tagged the guy who actually won it, Maxime Pivin Lapointe. And so I tagged him and reached out to him through a comment and asked him to send us an email so we can make sure we can pay off the contest and get that done. Thanks to Bet Online, and now you're going to have $50 deposited into your account, and do with that what you will. And we'll be doing more contests throughout, and of course, you can have some fun with Bet Online. And you have great cash out options, super fast, super convenient, safe, and secure. So thank you, Maxim, and congratulations for that. And thank you to everybody who had some fun. And as I mentioned, we're going to be doing some more of that. Anything else on the docket as far as the takeaway from last night? Because again, it's hard, when we do this live, so many people dip in, dip out, dip in, dip out, and I see in the comments,
I
hey,
agree.
what did you think about the Carrier hit from Tom Wilson? Well, we spent probably a good 22 minutes, so if you just go back in the video, you can see that take. But when we talk about the positives and the negatives in the playoffs, right, I understand that's the moral line. I
Not
understand
even the
some people
moral line,
don't
it's
have
the
an
goal.
appetite for this
It's
right
the
now
goal.
because they're in the thick of it, but this is the true long play. It's a great comment. I subscribe to this, Mr. Westcott, and that's how I want to win, obviously, but this is really where the value is.
Well, look, if you would have told anybody in September that the Canadiens would be going to Washington for game 5 in the playoffs with their young guns running and Demidov on this team, I think everybody would have called you A, crazy, and B, would have been over the moon thrilled as a best case scenario.
Right.
That's
Fair.
the way I see it,
Fair.
because
Fair.
what you're seeing on the ice is sustainable long-term growth. You're not seeing flashes in the pan. Slavkovsky's game is a sustainable way of play. Caulfield's two-way play is a sustainable way of play. Nick Suzuki didn't luck out on a borderline 90-point season. It was a sustainable way of play. Lane Hudson had a sustainable and yet historic way of play. He's continued it in the playoffs, 5 points in 4 games. At the end of the day, we can be frustrated about what you saw on the ice. You can be frustrated about decisions that were made, but the absolute winner in this situation is the future, and that's where I stand on the subject.
That's Marco D'Amico. You can follow him at MN D'Amico on all your favorite socials and check out RG Media. Can we get Marco mentioned, and I knew last week that he's talking about his sit down with Laval Rocket, future Montreal Canadiens blue liner David Reinbacher. And I know you mentioned in the next 24 hours. Can we get a little bit more precise on that or not yet?
Tomorrow.
What time? That's what I'm asking.
I don't know. I don't
Okay.
know. I don't decide the publication time, but it'll be out tomorrow. It'll
Okay.
be out tomorrow, and there's some good stuff in there. I think a lot of people think of David Reinbacher mostly as this kind of like safe defensive defenseman. I think you'll see in the playoffs that he can do much more than simply just stop pucks and box players out. He's going to be, even Pascal Vincent was ranting and raving about his breakout ability, and I think that, when it comes to David Reinbacher, my take is as long as he can stay healthy, I think he's a can't miss top 4 defenseman. With the potential of being a top pair guy. He has the tools. Now it's a question of staying healthy and getting the reps in.
Very exciting. Very exciting. And very much looking forward to that. And of course, we'll tag it. And we'll be back tomorrow at 11 a.m. And we get set for the day off with a little extra day in between. But that doesn't mean you can't help out a great cause. Big thanks to our friends at Silver Paw. It's their Everything Pet Warehouse sale event, up to 80% off on jackets, collars, everything you need. Treats, training toys, beds, coats. We all spoil our dogs and our cats. We treat them like children. It's where we are. And listen, part of this is going to benefit the SPCA West. So part of the proceeds in this gigantic sale of high-end treats and toys and clothing and bedding for your cat or dog, that $300 bed that you saw in the pet store, you're like, damn, that's a big price ticket. Well, that $300 bed is now $50, and you can take advantage of it May 2nd through 4th at Gallery des Sources in the West Island from 10 till 3 in the afternoon for May 2nd, 3rd, and 4th only. And through the show, we're giving you a chance to win $200. Just enter your name, your first name. We don't need your family name, baby. It's not an FBI forensics investigation. Just enter your name, enter your email address, and I put this website and the link in the pinned comment of today's video. So you don't have to do too much work. Just click on the link, put your name in, put your email, and hit enter, and you're done. And hopefully we'll see you there between May 2nd and May 4th for the Everything Pet Warehouse sale event, with part of the proceeds going to support the SPCA West. Marco, thanks as always. Great stuff. You can follow him at MN D'Amico. Enjoy your Monday. Looking forward to the Reinbacher interview out tomorrow. And D'Amico and I will be back at 11 a.m. right here live on the playoff run for the Montreal Canadiens. Marco, enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you so much.
Have a good day, everybody.